black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Martin Delany, though little known to the world today, is a towering figure in American history. In addition to being an abolitionist whose life was consumed with efforts to end slavery, Delany was also an author, newspaper editor, physician, and the first black field officer in the Union Army. He was also among the first 3 black men to enter Harvard Medical School. A friend of fellow abolitionist Frederick Douglass, Delany succeeded where Douglass had failed. Douglass had approached President Abraham Lincoln with a proposal to use black troops in the war against the South, with the idea that he would lead them into battle. Lincoln turned him down. But as the Civil War progressed, Lincoln's views on the recruitment of black soldiers shifted. By 1863, Martin Delany was recruiting black men across New England to serve in the newly formed and segregated 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment. 2 years later, he persuaded the president to commission black officers to lead black troops into battle. To that end, Delany was commissioned as a major. Let's dive into his story.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and I would like to welcome you to this show that I'm having today. For those of you who are new to the Umoja Circle, that's the Umoja Circle or Unity Circle, Unity Umoja being the first day of Kwanzaa. The Umoja Circle is African-centered talk show where I correct errors where errors are found, and I introduce fact where I find that so many people are working on fiction when it comes to who we are as people of African descent. And I also believe that it takes a shift in consciousness in order to change your world. So when new information comes into your being, and I hope the type of products I produce for the show, the historical information that I give you, it will shift your view in how we look as people of African descent compared to how we are projected a lot of times in this world. Yes, there was a thing called enslavement, but even during that period of time, there were people like the person I'm going to introduce you today that you most likely saw at the little short video clip that I established. I want to introduce you to this brother. History kind of made him disappear because I think at the time in the early, between the 1840s on until he died, this brother, Martin R. Delany, would be equivalent during that period of time in the 1800s to how we look at Malcolm X today, okay? He was an outspoken abolitionist. He is considered black, the godfather of black nationalism, and what he saw as not a bunch of individual people, he saw us as one nation within a nation. And he also was proud of his African heritage. Both his grandparents, he was proud to say, came from the continent of Africa. I think from his paternal side, his father's side, they were came from where is now known as Liberia. So he was proud of that. And from his mother's side, they also came from a certain part of Africa, and he is proud of that history. And that type of biology is found in 1867. He got this information from an author who did his biography. So this is where a lot of this information comes about who he was, because he talked about his past life in 1867. I think it was Francis Rollins is the author. And he gave this information about how proud he is. But like the video ended, let's go on to talk about this brother that I want to introduce you to, like I always do on the Umoja Circle, okay? To correct errors where errors are found and to introduce fact. where so many of us are working on fiction. We were no different back then as we are today in activism, in how we dealt with the issues that are dealing with it, the same kind of issues that dealing today. We were dealing with it, and we had our spokesman for our people back then. And here's this brother, Martin Robeson Delany. Let's go on. Here's some pictures of him. You see in the upper left-hand corner, he's wearing the Union uniform because he was a major in the United States colored troops at the near the end of the Civil War. Okay, a major, not somebody that's wearing a nice uniform that's heading the back. He was going to be a line officer just as the war ended, because he got commissioned a major in February, but he stayed in uniform for a little while after the war. That's him in the middle, proud black man, and again, various portraits of him in uniform. And he was also an author. He was also a correspondent. I did a show last time with another black man who was a correspondent during the Civil War. In fact, who was there when Richmond fell and wrote about it. And he's the one who made sure that it was known that the first Union troops that came into the defeated Richmond, capital of the Confederacy, were black troops. I talked about that last time on the show. Another great black man. But we're talking about this one. Let's go on to the next. Here's a close-up of him in uniform. Look at that proud black man. Okay, a major. Okay, not a private, but a major. A doctor, okay. So this man did a lot of different talents. Very brilliant. In fact, when he met Lincoln, who commissioned him, when black troops were needed to win the war, Lincoln told Stanton, who was the Secretary of War at the time, that this was a brilliant black man, interested and brilliant black man, after he finished talking to him. So Lincoln was really impressed with this brother. And this is the type of black men that we have, not always the person he was proud of his Africanness. That's what I love about him. No different than Malcolm, okay? Africa for Africans, that's what he said, okay? That the Pan-African movement said later on in the after his death in the early that's what people like who started the Pan-African movement, Marcus Garvey and the such, Trotter, those persons in the early 1900s, they took his voice and carried it into the 1900s. Let's go on to the next images. It's a close-up again of Brother Martin Delany, okay? And let's go on to the next. I guess if you heard in the video that he was born in what is now West Virginia, and there is a placard, and he's well known. Okay, so some of his accomplishments, his newspaper, the published the Mystery newspaper, in which he was a staunch abolitionist. In fact, he got in trouble for the type of things he wrote. He held nothing back. Okay. The first black newspaper west of the Alleghenies, I guess that would be 1843 to 47, co-edited the North Star. That's the paper that he and Frederick Douglass, who was a contemporary, and they were friends, and they worked. You heard about the North Star about Frederick Douglass, but again, Frederick Douglass did a lot of speeches and went out also, but who stayed home and ran it was Martin Delany, okay? Okay, let's go on to the next. And he was also an author. I got a copy of it right here, on my right next to me, Blake. Okay, about a black revolutionary. This is before the Civil War now. This brother talk about a black revolutionary. All right, and the brother who's the protagonist is Blake. Must read. He got pissed off, and somebody sold away her husband, Henry Blake. His wife was sold in Mississippi, and he just decided to raise heck, let's just say, throughout the South, going all the way into the South America. He was talking about a revolutionary. This is how this brother talked. Let's go on to the next. This is the North Star. This is the paper him and Frederick Douglass ran. It was 4 pages. His home base was in Pittsburgh. Let's go on to next. Like I said, before Malcolm, before Garvey, before Black is Beautiful was a slogan, it was a stance a Pittsburgh doctor, he was also a doctor, took in a Harvard classroom, a courtroom, and a canoe on the Niger River when he went back to Africa. His full name is Martin Robeson Delany, okay? Not Robinson, but Robson. A common misspelling, also spelled Delany in some sources. But this is how you spell his name. Must get his name correct when we call it out, okay? He lived between May 16, 6 to 1812 and died in January in 1885 at the age of 72. The titles he's earned in one lifetime: he was a physician, a journalist, a novelist, an explorer, an orator, a U.S. Army major, a judge, a political candidate, and the father of Black nationalism. Okay, we are a nation within a nation. This is what he talked about. Not trying to blend in, no different than the nations of our native brothers and sisters. He saw us as a nation. If you're going to separate us and you're going to treat us separately like you do, then we are a nation and we should function as a nation. This is not something that, again, this is something you heard Malcolm say, okay? Or you've heard people like Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam have said back in the day. But he said it over 100 years before. We've had those things. Now, he wasn't the only one. There was people like David Walker, but those are why I do my show, to introduce you to these people and to the books that will tell you about these people. Let's go on to the next. Let me give you a little history about this brother. He was born free. Let's get this straight, okay? In West Virginia, because his mother was free, and was born fighting. Okay, in 1812, Martin Delany was born in Charlestown, Virginia. Okay, this is where West Virginia is. His mother, Patty, was free. Under Virginia law, a child's status followed the mother. So Martin was born free even though his father, Samuel, was enslaved. This is how crazy America has been. And this is what some people today want to bring us back to, keep us separate. This is the kind of thing that we have to get straight about America. It was not the land of the free and the home of the brave. As long as black people were in those conditions, the words of Jefferson, words of the Declaration of Independence, the words of the Constitutions were not true for everybody. This is the part that he was very proud of, that's found in Rollins' book, Francis Rollins, his biographers. His grandparents on both sides had been born in Africa and were of the Mandingo ethnicity. Family oral history held that his paternal grandfather was a chieftain who resisted slavery until his death. Okay, this is the stock that he came from. Let's go on to the next. In 1822, he was at the age of 10. Listen to this craziness. Martin was caught reading the New York Primer that his mother bought from a person that was going around selling books, and she taught them to read from this primer. Okay, it was a math primer. Okay, but Virginia law banned black literacy. Okay, we weren't illiterate because we were not capable of reading and writing because of the idea that we somehow kind of animals, some kind of other. It was because by law, white America said, we don't want you to read. We just want your body. We don't care about your mind. We just want about your physicality. That's why we enslaved you. Okay? His mother, Patty, outraged by the fact that by this law, this sister walked her children 20 miles to Winchester to fight for their freedom in court. they moved the family to free Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, to protect them permanently. But let me give you a little more insight. Okay, it's against the law to read, but black people ignored that law, like his mother, a free black woman. I put that in question mark because she wasn't free to teach her children how to read, but she did anyway and write and made them literate. But they got caught and somebody dimed them. I guess they had Karens in those days too, you know. So his mother went to find a lawyer, and the thing is, she was under some. This law was serious because there was a white woman in Connecticut at the same time who went to jail because she was teaching black kids to read. So if they put a white woman who tried to teach an abolitionist in jail, you imagine what they'd do with this black woman. And then there was a lawyer who was very understanding. He told her, "Oh, you got to leave." So imagine you had to pack up in order to survive this system and get out of Dodge because you might be put in jail for just teaching your children to read. This is what people of African descent have to deal with. And we talk about fascism today. That's what the fascist society that we have. That's why we can recognize it. That's why we warn people in 2024 about the kind of things we were seeing, because we have a history of dealing with this type of reality in black America. Let's go on to the next. Okay, this is another crazy thing, because even though the mother took the children away, the father couldn't leave because he was enslaved. Okay, so she's there in, I think, Chambersburg. His father brought his own freedom and rejoined the family a year later after. So she had to deal with this, taking everything they had, you know, and again, the kind of love that had to be, because he worked to get his freedom so he'd go back to his family. He had to buy his freedom, okay? This is what we have to deal with. This is the things that make our experience and the way we function as people of African descent, because these memories, and this is why they don't want us to read history books, because they contradict the mythology of the land of the free and the home of the brave, okay? So this affected this young black kid. In 1831 at 19, the lady left home for Pittsburgh, okay? So he went out on his own, and, you know, hungry to learn. You know, black people don't want to learn, really. He studied at the Ucellar School of the African Methodist Episcopal Church and apprenticed under white physicians. That's why he was interested to become a doctor, but it wasn't easy, okay? Let's go on to the next. In 1832 and 1833, we got people today in the federal government who's pushing this non-vaccine stuff. But before there was any kind of vaccine, things like this happened in America, okay? Diseases that swept through cities all the time. And we want to stop taking vaccinations. How foolish are we today? And we haven't learned our lessons. Because look what happened in 1832 to 1833. Cholera hits Pittsburgh. You know, while white doctors and residents fled, Delany stayed. And this is where he got his medical training. Treated the sick with the Ayers medicine. It's called cupping and leaching, but other techniques, even though no one yet understood how the disease spread. Okay? Study classics. He studied Latin and Greek alongside medicine, refusing to let society limit his intellect to one lane. He went multiple lanes. That's why I'm introducing you to this brother, okay? This is the type of people we got to understand in our history, in our lexicon, our philosophers, our black thinkers, okay? They look like us. And this brother, along with Frederick Douglass and other greats that I've talked about through the years in this show, I want you to understand, you know, correct errors where errors are found and introduce facts where you find that people are working on fiction. How many of you know or ever heard about this brother? Most likely not. And some of y'all got master's and doctor's degree from these systems, but you don't understand anything about anybody that looks like you. You only see somebody of European descent. Not knocking their intelligence, but how somehow they disconnected us from our national heroes. Let's go on to the next. This is the 1830s I'm talking about, okay? He attended his first National Negro Convention in Philadelphia and began imagining a black Israel, a self-governed black nation. He said those words in 1835. In other words, he said about finding, this is the time of the colonizing movement, okay? And he was saying that if you don't want us here in America, he was one of those blacks who said, well, let's go find our own place, okay? And he was a proponent of colonizing other parts of the world, especially going back to Africa, because he never went to Africa, but he heard from his family oral history about where he came from, okay? The Mandinga, and his other, from his grandparents, one of his grandparents, I think on his mother's side, she lived until 107 years old. She stayed with his mother, Patty, okay, and died at 107. So I'm sure the oral stories of her homeland and where she came from was still in his head. And so he understood this, okay, a self-governed black nation, okay, and on his father's side, again, they came from the area that we know as Liberia today. Those are one of the places they want to send black people under when James Monroe. That's why the capital of Liberia is Monrovia. But he wanted to go back, and his family came from that region of Africa, all right? So let's go on to the next. Okay, in 1843, he married his better half, okay, Catherine A. Richards in Pittsburgh, because they would have 11 children. 7 of them survived to adulthood, and he insisted on educating all of them, okay? He didn't just talk the talk, he set the example and the model. In 1843, he founded the newspaper in Pittsburgh, The Mystery, one of the first black-owned newspaper in the U.S. He used it to call out injustice directly. That's where the part of him, I can imagine some of the articles that he wrote is like you hearing and listening to Malcolm speak during the 50s and 60s. He was saying that 110 years prior to those times. In 1846, he was even sued and convicted of libel for naming a black man he accused of being a slave catcher. White supporters paid his $650. If you're a traitor, don't we have certain black people who are today who are betraying their own people? It was the same back then. I mean, every group had their people who work against their own people's interests. All over Europe, there's stories of people who betrayed kings and queens and people in concentration camps. There were people who betrayed to benefit in the system. When you create a horrific system, you're going to have those who are going to try to survive any way they can. Okay, so people, Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser in the early 1800s did those slavery votes, okay? They all were betrayed by people that looked like them. So this is nothing new. And he called out one of them. But he was sued, and again, the justice system did not work on his side. But that was okay, didn't stop him. Let's go on to the next one. $650, a lot at that time. He met in 1847 another great man, one of my heroes, Frederick Douglass, and also a white man who was a great abolitionist, William Lloyd Garrison, who during their Pittsburgh anti-slavery tour, they were going around. The thing is that people don't want to understand. If we don't talk about black history, we don't understand the white allies that we've had. We've always had white allies in the struggle. But if you don't talk about that history, which we were in charge of, we didn't depend on them to do the work. We did it ourselves, but they allied with us. And some of them paid the price, like, John Brown and William Lloyd Garrisons and those folks. They didn't have a great life, but they were determined to work with us. And he saw, when they were doing this tour in 1847, in fact, William Lloyd Garrison said he would take a lot of the articles that he found in the Mystery and put it in his newspaper, which was a great abolitionist newspaper, the liberator, and there's so he knew about Martin Delany through his writings. So there was a connection, a network in the abolitionist world. Let's go on to the next. Okay, and this is what started this newspaper that many of you would know about. I had an image of the newspaper earlier, and that's the North Star. Okay. Douglas split with from Garrison over strategies and the need for a black-run press. I guess William Lloyd Garrison was trying to get a little bit too. We didn't want you to take over, sir. Don't be too paternal. And him and Douglas split, which is understandable. People disagree. Okay. So therefore, Douglas and Delany co-founded the North Star in Rochester, New York. So he went from Pittsburgh after he got sued and went to Rochester, New York to start another newspaper with Frederick Douglass. And that newspaper was one of the #1 black newspaper before the Civil War. The subscription levels was in the thousands. Black people were reading it all over. Okay? Douglass ran the editing, printing, and publishing from Rochester. Delany traveled the country lecturing, reporting, and signing up subscribers, effectively serving as the paper field correspondent and business engine. So he went out to do the selling of the newspaper because he was an orator. He could speak. So was Douglass, but that's how they got the subscription so high. It's called the Martin Delany, okay? But Frederick Douglass is what we're told. They'll give us one or the other instead of saying that there's more than just one person like these two. And they worked in tandem. Let's go on to the next. In 1848, Delany reporting on the Crossway trial about capturing runaway enslaved people helped push abolitionists Salmon B. Chase to successfully remove a pro-slavery judge from the Free Soil Party's presidential ticket, an early example of journalism directly shaping political outcomes. Okay, this is all leading up to the Civil War, though. These are all the events. It was not. It was. You got to understand that the previous 20 years before the Civil War kicked off, it was a battle between the abolitionist movement and those pro-slave holding states and people who believed in that white supremacy. Now, I'm going to stop it here and continue in the next show. But I want you to understand, I'm giving you a little background about why you find, and there's more to come. This brother has a lot to understand and to emulate, okay? Him and Frederick Douglass are and Malcolm are my heroes, okay? And that's who I emulate when I talk about intellectual thought, questioning. These are the people that I look at to guide my daily actions. But for now, I'm gonna stop it here. So until next time, peace, hotel, bye-bye.